Hello and welcome back to Transvox. And it's my pleasure today to welcome a different guest. I think in the annals of trans history, Petra Wenham, who is my guest today, will stand out as one of those particularly trailblazing trans people who's done lots to help the community and has been particularly noticeable in the media for many years. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome her today. So, first of all, hi Petra, how are you?
Hi there, Gillian. I'm good. Was I a little bit worried about, shall we say, recent events? I would be very wrong to say it did not cause me some concern, but
Mm.
I'm otherwise good.
Good. With as well as can be expected, as we used to say
I
in back
think
in the day.
absolutely.
Look, I know all about you because obviously I've spoken to you and I've heard of you before in the past. But for those three people on the planet who've not heard of you, tell us a little bit about you and your journey and you where you are in this world.
Okay, I am a first generation baby boomer. I was born in December 1946.
Wow.
I have to date done 73 trans awareness talks, and of the more recent ones, probably about last 10 or 12, I've taken to starting my talk with a little four-line statement which goes a bit like this. I knew I was different to the other boys. I didn't understand it. I didn't have the words. I was only four. And that is the starting point. And I think many trans people will be able to relate to that, changing the boy to girl and things like that. And also, I'm not deliberately stating whether I'm non binary or female. I happen to be trans female, but that's by the by. That statement, I think, stands. Move on to the juniors, and I was started being sort of name called, bullied, on the way going home. Occasionally I would be, shall we say, roughed up. Come moving on from primary to secondary education, if you ignore the two or three children that got scholarships to go off to grammar school, the rest of the class went off to a brand new co-educational secondary school in our adjacent town, except for one pupil, me. I got sent a few towns away to an all boys secondary school. No one bothered to explain to me quite. They said, "Oh, that's where you're going." Later on into adulthood, I found out that the reason why I was sent to the all boys secondary school is because it was decided I needed role models.
Ah.
Secondary school, I got an apprenticeship with what was then called Post Office Telephones, now British Telecom. And I took advantage of night school and a day release, and I then took myself off in 1967 to Portsmouth Polytechnic, now a university, where I embarked on an engineering degree, electrical engineering. And I actually took leave from the post office, unpaid leave, to actually go and do my degree. You may sound that's a bit odd, but nevertheless, I did a 4 year degree. So it was what's called a thick sandwich, i.e., college industry. And the
Oh,
industry was all actually, the college actually had input to what I should be doing in the industry thing. So I actually have a diary
mm.
of all of my things that I did during that 4 years. It's quite fascinating, really.
And so was the gender thing becoming obvious to you at that point? As that, because actually in those days, I'm guessing, certainly in my days, we didn't really have a language much for it. So
No,
how were you making sense of the world during this period?
it was difficult. I was just, if you, I think, as many trans people did, you still don't understand it. There's something wrong that you are different. You know that sometimes when you're walking down a shopping parade and that, you feel that the clothes in the women's store are the ones that you should be wearing. And to find a woman that would be happy to talk to you was difficult because what I was missing and it was becoming quite apparent, was I wanted my social world was missing because the people I wanted to socialize with didn't want to know. Anyway, I eventually found, having done my degree, and then I was transferred up to British Telecom's headquarters. And I won't go into what I did, it was a tad technical, but we had an admin group, and I got to know one lady there who was doing the admin, and we clicked. She was more than happy to talk to me as a human being. And eventually we realized that we were soulmates, and Lorraine is in the back room now.
Oh,
All right. And we have been married 52 years.
oh.
And at any rate, carry on. Before we got married, I won't say I confess, but I told Lorraine that I did occasionally cross dress. And the reason why I did it was for mental relief.
Mm.
Nothing sexual in it at all. It's the fact that wearing the clothes, one felt whole and bright. But again, we still didn't have the words and understanding out there to say, okay, that means you're probably transgender. But I
Yeah.
didn't have that. And so that's been all the way through our marriage. But 10 years ago, no, let me go back a bit. If you come up to the mid 90s, accessing the internet was using a dial up modem, which was very slow and horrendously
Yeah.
expensive. So I just used it for email because in 1995, the company I was working for said, bye. But they did give me a very good package.
Mm.
And so I became a freelance IT auditor. And I think the back end of 1990, I had broadband installed courtesy of the cable TV company. And one of the earliest websites I found was Susan's Place, and it's still there
Oh, yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And as the clock ticked on, more and more information came through. I was getting the words, I was getting the understanding. Anyway, I came across a blog by Jenny Boylan.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And it was her glass shard blog, which
Mm.
was when she was in Dublin and a glass bottle had fallen on the kitchen floor. She was on a 2 years academic exchange. They'd swept all the glass up. And then about a week or so later, she walked across the kitchen floor barefoot to answer the front door and
Mm.
found the glass shard they'd missed. Anyway, 3 weeks later, a visit to A&E with a very painful swollen foot. The nurse removed the glass shard, and as Jenny said, the relief was instant. And that's the moment when she went from knowing that she was transgender to actually accepting it, then embracing it. And when she got back to the States, she moved on to do something about it. That was my moment of saying, okay, I'm transgender. I'm going to accept
Mm.
it. Got home, talked to Lorraine, embraced it. And
So, how did your partner cope with it then? What was her reaction? Or had she suspected all along?
because of the cross dressing and the fact that she knew that I did it for mental relief, etc., okay, it took a few days, but accepted.
That's very lucky.
Yeah. And so, yes, so that was in the August of 2015 when that happened. Early 2016, I met a relatively local trans lady and talked to her. She introduced me to the Oasis support group, which is based up in Norwich. But I think that it was coming out to Lorraine, accepting that I was transgender, coming out to Lorraine, so that I was then able to embrace it, lifted a huge amount of stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any rate, both of us went up to Oasis in the August of 2016. So I was referred to the Tavistock, but I knew even then in August 2017 that the queue to get the
Mm.
first appointment was about 18 months, I think,
Mm.
then. quite quick in comparison to today, though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I started with a private clinic in the January of 2018. And of course, the psychologist I saw at the private clinic was also a psychologist for the Tavistock.
Ah, handy.
At any rate, my Tavistock, but the end in January 2019, I was given a private prescription for HRT.
Mhm.
And in the March of 2019, I had my first appointment with the Tavistock. And oh, magically, they've got my reports from any rate.
It's
So,
who you know, isn't it? Not what you know.
no, unfortunately, it is. At any rate, I was pretty much out by then. I think I always went to the private clinic completely as me, dressed. It was no point messing around.
Mm.
And I think it was not sure whether it was the HRT appointment or one of the earlier ones, but do you remember Rigby and Pella were lost
Oh, the
there? Yeah,
bras.
you know, that day when it
Still
came
there.
out, we were there in London having
Mm.
my thing, and so when we came out, we walked down to Oxford Circus to look for somewhere to go and have lunch because I took Lorraine came with me to the private clinic as well, and we were stopped by a Japanese TV crew and interviewed.
Oh, wow.
Okay, okay, life carries on. Yes, I had some NHS money to pay for some electrolysis. If I'd been much younger and had very dark hair, the money
Mm.
would have paid for a complete, more or less a complete clearance using laser.
Yeah. Yeah.
But using electrolysis, no, it's 18 treatments I think I had under their money, 17 or
Yeah.
18.
It's
Um,
painful, isn't it?
oh, it can be.
Mm.
Yes, yeah. I have to admit I've got to the point where I often have a slight snooze whilst
Yes.
doing it.
So you're, I suppose, what we politely call people over a certain age, a trans elder community, and I'm often lumped into that category as well. So that's okay, isn't it? And you must have seen a huge number of changes over the last 3 or 4 years, and we all know about that. And I suppose one of the things you've done to probably keep your sanity, but also help everybody, is to engage on a series of talks. Most famously, talks with the WI. I wonder if you can tell us a bit about the talks you do, rather. Yeah.
Yeah, the my first talk, or first formal talk, was actually in March of 2020, about 2 or 3 weeks before lockdown, and that was to a local community group in the local town, and that came about because Lorraine had been talking a bit about me within that group. It
Mm.
was a mixed group, and they said to Lorraine, "Oh, would she like to come along and talk to us?" So she did. She put together some decent overhead slides and a talk. And we've gone on from there. We've now done, as I said, 73 of them. About 65 have gone to WI groups. Quite a few were done during lockdown over Zoom. And one of the ones I did during lockdown over Zoom was to a WI federation based in Ontario, Canada. Yeah. The other talks I've done have been to community groups, and 3 were to local NHS hospital trusts, to GP, in fact, trainee GPs. And I've got another talk coming up in December, again to trainee GPs in our local NHS hospital.
What were the questions you tended to get asked?
In essence, is when did you really know? How did you know? What made you eventually transition? What is it like having transitioned? Those sorts of
Yeah.
things. Because obviously one tells them that what you're on HRT and things like that. But of course, for those earlier NHS talks, I hadn't had surgery, but for the next one, they can have the surgery bit.
Mm. Yes, yes. And so it's very interesting. And so how do you see recent developments with the rollback of rights with, or potential rollback of rights with Supreme Court and AHRC and data capture and such like? Where's your thinking on
Uh,
those things?
I've had a couple of fairly recent talks post. One was just post the Supreme Court, and the second one was post the HRC. General feedback was, it's nonsense. You're a woman,
Mm.
we accept you. End of story.
Yeah.
And in fact, all of the feedback I've had from not just the WI groups, but from the community groups, how can I put it? Warmth, support,
Yeah.
interest, some interesting questions. Yes, again, about what made you, what influenced you. And again, it all comes down to information availability.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And it's interesting that when you do these talks to community and WI groups, and you can do them in person, and I love doing them in person because you get that audience interaction.
Yeah.
Because I will accept questions as we go because it's a difficult subject for some people to get their heads around. But the general view I get is that people accept, and they accept it on the basis they don't fully understand it. Like they get in a car and the car works. They don't know all the ins and outs of how a car works,
Mm.
but they understand and they accept it and they use it. And
Mm.
that's what it is with most people's view of the trans community.
So were you optimistic about the future despite the current setbacks?
I'm no, yes, I'm more optimistic than pessimistic. I think there's going to be some fairly big legal battles, and it really depends on how well the case is put and argued. And I think there's going to have to be external pressure on the politicians to make sure that when we do go to court, we can present ourselves and our and us.
Mm. I think probably with hindsight, what we know is that they probably just thought they were ruling on a small thing and didn't necessarily realize this would turn out to be a big thing.
Yes, I would agree with that. Also, if you look at all 86 pages have been virtually ignored,
Yeah,
apart from the one statement about biological sex, which of course they didn't go on and define,
no,
because you and I know that biological sex is anything but binary.
yeah, exactly right.
So it was a complete, I'm going to say, to my mind, they should have looked at it and said, okay, we understand where you women for Scotland are coming from. Okay, our thing is that you need to have balance. Yes, you need balance in these public bodies,
Yeah,
and therefore the balance is you've got males and females, and you need some a trans person in there to bring the trans thing. Not saying who they belong to, but a trans woman is there as a trans person, not as a woman.
mm,
And if they had said that, then I think it would have been very hard for people to argue against it because you're saying, okay, yep, you need balance male and female, but you do need the input from the minority groups.
yeah,
And it could be that you had a minority group person who was there representing, shall we say, the trans community and the disabled community
yeah, and intersex.
and intersex. And that one person could have represented all of those things.
Yeah.
But no, that's too obvious.
I don't know whether it's obvious. I think it's necessarily, again, it comes down to whether
Mm.
this was competence, understanding, or actually part of a bigger agenda. And the thing is, we won't know that for a generation until,
No, exactly.
until this whole thing plays out. I would say there's a pendulum at work, isn't there? And it's been
Yeah,
swinging in one direction for a while, and it's globally swinging the other at the moment. So I think it's going to be tricky times for trans folk for a little while. And as trans folk
yeah,
ourselves, it's not great to say that. But are you, in terms of your own future, you're going to plod, keep plod, I was saying, plodding along, doing your talks, living your life, just being
absolutely.
yourself. That's what it's all about, isn't it? The fact that you're
Exactly.
trans is just incidental, isn't it?
Exactly. I am a woman who happens to be a trans woman. just
Yeah.
like you meet some women who are French or
Yeah.
Welsh. I just happen to be trans.
Look, Petra, you're a force of nature, and thank you for spending time with us today. It's
Yes.
been good fun listening to your story. And it's interesting to hear that so many stories that currently exist are so similar to the one that you have.
Yeah.
These are not, how can I say, there's commonality in all of our journeys and all of
Yeah.
our stories, isn't there? And I think it's that thing about you only know
Mm.
who you are when you've really only know who you are when you've realized what you are, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And the only message I would give to anyone listening is if you're an older person, it's never too late. And I see posts in various social media where people in their 30s and 40s are saying, it's too late. No,
Yeah.
it's not. No, I was 68 when I pressed the button.
And what message would you have to the younger generation? So you've mentioned the people, it's never too late, but what about the much younger generation? What thoughts would you have for them?
I think that's a very difficult one. You really, first of all, that you are seen, certainly by us older trans people, we understand you. We are here for you to talk to. Unfortunately, we can't do very much more than be socially active with you, and we will carry on fighting for you to get the medical and the societal acceptance of you. That
That's it.
is that is it.
Yeah, and that's the note we should end on. So thank you so much for spending time with me today, Petra. It's been a real joy to speak to you.
Thanks a lot, Gillian.
You take care.